humans, I'm Yoshiller, and welcome to the final episode of my Splatoon series, Ink It Up! Yes, the bittersweet moment has arrived. It is a sad day for Splatoon 1 fans, but it's a great day for Splatoon 2 fans. And since this is the finale of the series, I thought that it would make sense to make a reflective episode to wrap up everything. I wanted to go back and explain how much of an impact Splatoon had on me, and I wanted to go back and point out some of the noteworthy moments throughout my Splatoon series. So in case you guys don't know, Splatoon is among Nintendo's newest and most successful IPs, and I'm very grateful that I was able to experience the game early on and be a part of its lifespan. The game was first unveiled at E3 2014, where it initially received mixed feedback. Most of the feedback was positive, but I do remember the general vibe being along the lines of, it's not bad, but I need to see more of it to be excited for the game. And yeah, I played the game there too, and I had a similar opinion. So from there, Nintendo went on a huge promotional spree to try and make this game a huge hit. And it worked. They did promotions in Canadian malls and European skate parks. They made commercials with songs that would get stuck in your head, for better or for worse.
You're a kid now, you're a squid now, you're a kid, you're a squid, you're a kid, you're a squid, you're a kid now.
They made presentations solely dedicated to the game. They announced an amiibo line. They released Wii U bundles with the game in Super Smash Bros. They had online demo sessions. They put a trophy of the character in Super Smash Bros. And they held a big preview event in Santa Monica, California, where they had Disney XD celebrities try and promote the game as well. And it was actually quite a fun ride to see this game go on its road to success, and I'm happy to have been a part of it. So that's how Splatoon became successful, but where does my story start? Well, if we wind the clock back to PAX East 2015, Splatoon was Nintendo's main game during that event, and there was a huge line surrounding it. When I waited in line, Kit from Nintendo Minute actually gave me media privilege to skip the second half of the line and go straight to the front of the line. So I got to play the game pretty quickly, I recorded it, and I enjoyed my time. And Nintendo also gave up 4 different Splatoon pins, and I managed to collect all 4 of them, and I still have them. And after that, Nintendo held their Splatoon test fire sessions where players could download a demo of Splatoon onto their Wii U systems and play online during specified times. I participated in most of these times, and during one of them, the servers crashed, so I spent the entire time inking the tutorial level, which admittedly turned out to be pretty hilarious. And I stated that Nintendo hosted an event in Santa Monica, California, and that was the Splatoon Mess Fest, which I attended. They had a big obstacle course set up, and I sadly couldn't go through it, but they did have a few Splatoon kiosks set up where people could play the game. And so that's what I did. I played the game. There were some teenage celebrities from Disney XD there, and I had the opportunity to play against one of them in some Splatoon matches. And soon after that, I was awarded a Splatoon shirt, and Nintendo staff interviewed me for a few commercials. And then from there, Splatoon was released and it would go on to be a huge success around the world. You can find Splatoon merchandise pretty regularly, and Nintendo loves to promote these characters. It's actually pretty common to see characters like Mario, Link, Pikachu, and an Inkling all in the same promotional artwork. I even remember when Splatoon first came out and Nintendo said that ranked battles would only become available once enough players reached level 10. And then only about a day later, ranked battles became available and Nintendo had to change the way that the level up system worked because so many people leveled up to level 20, the maximum at the time, so quickly.
We're happy to announce that because so many people who played Splatoon over the weekend reached level 10, ranked battles will be available for play starting today, June 1st, at 7 p.m. Pacific.
Anyway, Splatoon released on May 29th, 2015, and I immediately bought the game and dove into it. I made 2 walkthroughs for the game, one for the single player on its own, and the second, since I bought all the amiibo, for all of the amiibo missions. I also launched a new online series called Ink It Up! And at the time, I had been running 2 other Wii U series in the form of Mario Kart 8, called Random Rapid Races, and Super Smash Bros. Called Smash It Up! And trying to come up with names for my Splatoon series, I initially considered the simple name of Splat It Up. But since the name sounded similar to my Smash series, Smash It Up, and since the acronym of SIU was the same for both, I went with Ink It Up instead. And much like my Mario Kart 8 and Smash Wii U series, Ink It Up would focus on my crazy experiences in multiplayer sessions, whether they be online or offline, and they would be primarily uploaded on the weekends. And as Ink It Up went on, I had a lot of crazy sessions and it became a major part of my channel. Though when I was originally recording Splatoon videos, recording episodes for the series was a bit tricky. Unlike Smash Wii U, the camera is only focused on me and my actions, which meant that it would be easy for me to record by myself, but it would be tricky to record with a full friend room. And sure, I recorded Mario Kart 8, which is another game that mainly focuses on me and my actions, but Splatoon has an interesting setup, in which the goal of the game is to mainly do your own thing, whether that means directly competing with an opponent, or helping from the sidelines. And unlike Mario Kart 8, I typically needed to have an even room of players, and I almost always tried to go for a full room of 8 players. And not only was this a new franchise, but the formatting and structure of the series was a bit different from my other series. In something like Smash Wii U, I usually only needed 3 players, and then the 4 of us would just choose whatever characters and stages that we liked, and then sometimes I'd do a theme, like a Halloween theme, or a new stage would come out and we would only focus on the new stage. So it was pretty easy to get a Smash Wii U session going. So in order to counteract all these problems, and in order to adjust to these new changes in my Splatoon series, I sometimes had to alternate perspectives, and I did make my own theme sessions with what I had to work with, and I let my fellow teammates sometimes decide the rules and the stages, etc. I just had to make sure that whatever I was doing was worth watching. It was definitely a different beast than anything else I had recorded before. And yet, with each of the 46 episodes that I created, I feel like each of them was important. I feel like each episode had its own story to it. I know that it's weird to say that for a series that's based on the multiplayer gameplay of a shooter game about squids, but I really feel like each episode can be viewed on its own, and the viewer would have a different experience with each episode. And in order to demonstrate these important values between Splatoon and myself, I shall go back through each episode of my series individually, and provide a summary of each one while also pointing out highlights and noteworthy moments for each one. This series went through a few drastic changes as time went on, and I'll be sure to point them out as we go along. And not only did these changes affect my Splatoon series, but they also affected how I made videos as a content creator. So Splatoon was really important for my evolution of video production. For instance, when my series first began, I didn't have a custom song for my intro. My intro was actually very sloppily made, and my Inkling artwork was just a variation of my channel artwork at the time. My friend, Nebrock Rock, just altered it slightly to make it look like a squid. Anyway, let's start at the beginning of this series, shall we? On the day of the game's release, May 29th, I hopped online with the most default equipment that I could. It was my first time playing online, at least in the full version of the game, and I enjoyed it. The following session, 5:30:15, I recorded my first friend session. Friend rooms did not exist yet, so my friends and I had to go into a public lobby and essentially invade it. Either way, it was my first co-commentated session of the series, and it was my first episode in which I used my iconic splat roller. And my friends and I had so much fun playing Splatoon when it initially released that we just kept playing it, and I just kept recording it. So that led us to the 5:31:15 recording session, in which we all hopped online and played again. And this time I had a few other friends join me, and I think this might have been the first time that one of my groups of friends interacted with another one of my groups of friends. So Splatoon was also helpful in intertwining my social circles. And it's so neat to see the old version of Urchin Underpass. In the 6:1:15 session, it was our initial plan to play the newly released Ranked Battle mode. However, we realized that we couldn't play this mode with friends, so we shifted back over to regular battle mode, but it's okay, because a new map, Port Mackerel, was also available at the time. But because there were so many of us trying to play, we kinda messed around a lot.
I'm gonna get some EXP real quick. I want some EXP!
Wow!
Titan, oh my god!
Try to get 100%.
They're gonna die! Oh my god!
Oh god, okay, I'm
Oh
staying.
my god!
Just get 100%.
In the 6:2:15 session, things were similar to last time, except that this time around, all we did was mess around. When Splatoon was released, I thought that my main weapon was actually going to be the ink brush. The ink brush was not available in the game, but it became available on 6:5:15. And so I tried to record an entire session using the ink brush, and I thought I would adjust to it, but honestly, I did not really like it. On 6:10:15, the Kelp Dome stage was released, so we tried to get a bunch of players into a public room, and while doing so, I began wearing my now infamous bicycle helmet.
Well, whoever's on your Yoshiller team just lost.
Oh no!
That's not how this works! That's not how it works!
You know what it is? It's that stupid freaking bicycle helmet.
That has nothing to do with it!
It's totally the bicycle helmet.
It's not the bicycle helmet!
Bringing everyone down.
Alright.
Freaking bicycle helmet.
If you think
What?
a measly freaking bad luck helmet is gonna be enough to take me down, you've got another thing coming.
Wear a headband or a snapback.
And you know what? I'm gonna win this match and I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna be happy. Be like, hey, you said I was cursed? Well, I left on a win or something.
It's your shoe.
This
Yeah,
is sad.
we
I am
lost that.
sad. I'm going
Good
home.
job,
Yoshiller's cursed.
I'm going to bed.
Take that
I'm gonna take
stupid
this helmet
Take that
and I'm gonna
black
return
helmet
it.
off right now.
I'm gonna give it back to the helmet guy, whichever person that is. Alright, I'm like, you can keep it! I don't want it anymore!
Bring it back to the store.
That moment when Yoshiller breaks.
Bye!
On 6/20/15, Tails' channel had actually been over at my house due to E3 plans, so we recorded the local multiplayer of the series. Yeah, remember that? There's a balloon popping mode you can play against friends. And I learned that I'm pretty bad at using a pro controller with this game. but at least I'm one of the few people to actually showcase this mode. On 7/1/15, the Tower Control mode was released, and seeing as I had not previously recorded any ranked battles, I actually hopped onto ranked battles for the first time, and I recorded them by myself. And so, this was the first time since the first episode of the series where I played and commentated without a guest. And as time went on, Tower Control would quickly become one of my favorite modes in the game, and it all started with this session. On the 4th of July, Splatoon finally hosted its first Splatfest after a few delays, and this Splatfest was cats versus dogs. And so, I joined in and I chose Team Dogs. Unfortunately, at this time, I did not record the final results of the Splatfest, but just know that Team Dogs was the winner, so that much is still good. On 7/7/15, I did something a bit differently. Despite this only being the 11th episode of the series, people were complaining that I used the Splat Roller way too much, even though there were 3 episodes beforehand that featured me dominantly using a different weapon. So in order to please the fans, I held a Splat Charger only session, and it was my first theme session of the series. So not only was I required to use the Splat Charger, but all the other participants were required to use it as well. Oh, and there was something about Donut Boy from Jimmy Neutron.
If you want to take your spot, you can.
Guys,
you can try.
Tim's running down.
Oh no.
I'm not Tim.
Oh. I'm not.
I hate
My
you.
name's not
Dominic, what was I gonna do? You were standing in blue territory.
Dominic.
Boy theme song, Who's the super cool cop? It always gets the bad guy. Donut Boy, that's me, yeah. He brings a delicious assortment of sweet delights. Donut Boy, got a creamy filling.
Anyway, on 8/5/15, finally a major Splatoon update rolled out that allowed for players to finally host friend rooms. So, in order to celebrate, I gathered some players and recorded all sorts of different matches on all sorts of different stages. And because Splatoon had received a major update, I had given my series structure a major update too. This was the first episode to feature new Inkling artwork on the thumbnail, as drawn by CB Animation, and it was the first episode to use the official Ink It Up theme, which was composed by my friend Peach Toadstool, who would later appear in the series. On 8/14/15, Splatoon released its new Rainmaker mode. Now, this is the first time that I held a room solely for a new mode, so technically it counts as a themed session because all my friends and I did was play Rainmaker. And I think this is the only time where I held a friend room and my friends and I only played one type of mode. Although we would also play hide and seek later, but I'll talk about that in a second. So we just played Rainmaker on a bunch of maps, and it was fun. Okay, so speaking of hide and seek, on 8/19/15, I showcased this custom mode that my friends and I made. Hide and seek works by having one player seek 4 players, and the first person to be found would be the new seeker in the following match. At least that's the rule set that my friends and I made. We would later do sessions where there would be 8 players and it would be 4 seekers versus 4 hiders. And I understand that there are other content creators out there who have their own variation of the game, but this is the first time that we created this mode without knowing of anyone else's variation. On 8/20/15, a new map by the name of Flounder Heights was released. This is the first time I had recorded a session since 6/10/15, solely to showcase a new map. So, I held a session to showcase a new map, but this time we had access to friend rooms. This would become a regular thing later on, but I was a bit curious as to how to do things this time around. So the solution that I came up with was that I would host a friend room, I'd invite 7 players, and we'd play each game mode in the game at least once on this new map, and we would play 2 rounds of hide and seek. It seemed like this was the most logical and fun solution, and it seemed like a nice way to combine everything that had happened in this series up to this point. Friend rooms, all game modes, full rooms, hide and seek. It was fun. And on 9/17/15, we did the same thing, but this time it was for a new map called Hammerhead Bridge. I hosted a friend room, got 8 players, recorded all the game modes and a few rounds of hide and seek. It was fun. On 9/19/15, I recorded another Splatfest, and this was the first one that I had recorded since the very first Splatfest, even though there were other Splatfests that occurred and I definitely participated in them. This one was Team Art versus Team Science, and so I chose Team Art. And this time, I did record the results, and Team Art was victorious. Barely, but they were victorious nonetheless. Woo! Team Art! On 11/13/15, a new map known as Museum de Alfonsino was released, and the entire session focused on this new map, but the players in this session were mostly different from players that appeared in the other episodes, which led to some pretty fun results. And again, on 12/4/15, another new map was released, and this map was Mahi Mahi Resort. This session had the same structure as the previous episode, but again, we had a different rotation of players, which led to some very different results. After realizing that the past few episodes were based solely on events that happened in the game, like a new map or a Splatfest, I decided to do something different on 12/8/15. I also realized that I'd only been recording Ink It Up episodes about once a month, so I wanted to try and add some more Yoshiller flair to it. So in order to add some more diversity to the series, I hosted another session in which I was not allowed to use my splat roller. Instead, I used a sloshing machine, and I required that every other player had to use a slosher weapon of some sort, because a lot of people were still complaining that I was only using the splat roller. So I figured I would cater to the needs of many. This led to a few interesting questions about the series though, as this was the first weapon-specific session that I had hosted since 5 months earlier. Since the last time that I had hosted a themed session, friend rooms weren't available yet. Even more so, I had yet to record a friend room session that did not revolve around a new map or a new mode. So this episode would eventually lead to the structure of future friend room episodes, where each player would have a turn to decide what map and mode we should play. On 12/28/15, a map by the name of Piranha Pits was released. So, as has become a tradition at this point, I gathered some friends and recorded all the available game modes on the stage. And yeah, it was fun, and it was a nice way to wrap up my year of Splatoon. And so on 1/2/16, I recorded my first Splatoon session of the year. And I had hosted my first generic friend room. No themes, no maps, no specific modes, just a recording session with friends. Each player chose a map and a mode, but this time we could use any weapon that we wanted. And this would actually be the structure that would be used in future friend room sessions. On 1/10/16, I recorded squad battles for the first time. And additionally, this was my first recording session to have a major focus on the Splat Zones mode. I teamed up with Artsy Omni, CV Animation, and Yoshi1Up, and together, we had a rough start with a smashing success by the end of it. On 1/13/16, for the first time in a long while, I just recorded a public session with friends, but not a squad battle, just a regular old turf war. I was going to head out of town and I needed a video, so I played turf war with some friends, and it was fun. On 1/21/16, the final Splatoon map was released, and it was a stage known as Anchovy Games. And so, for the final time, I recorded an entire session based on a new map. All things considered, this is the 25th episode of the series, so the fact that there was still fresh content up until the 25th episode is a pretty nice surprise to me. On 1/26/16, I hosted another session that was heavily based on hide and seek. After the first hide and seek session went over so well, I decided to host another one. Plus, I also wanted to show that I still had intentions on providing content for the series, even though all the maps and modes were released up to this point. 2/13/16 marked the beginning of my
Fan February
recordings, where I would add a few fans to my friend roster and I would host sessions based on specific modes in the game. To kick things off, I hosted a session that was based solely on tower control, and I recorded as many matches as I could in a 45-minute session. And I made sure that the teams were randomized every time. On 2/20/16, I recorded a Splatfest session, and the theme of this one was Pokemon Red versus Pokemon Blue. And for a fair share of the session, I was paired up with my friend PK Sparks. Unfortunately, the Pokemon Red team was defeated, but I still had fun participating in the Splatfest. On 2/27/16,
Fan February
continued, and this time I held a session that was based on Rainmaker. This time, I added a completely different set of fans, and I recorded as many Rainmaker matches as I could in 45 minutes. On 2/29/16, which is Leap Day, I decided to host one more
Fan February
session, and this time I would alternate between all 4 main modes of Splatoon, and any fan that I had added previously was allowed to join. And this time around, I just decided to record as many matches as I could in 45 minutes, whether it be Turf War, Splat Zone, Rainmaker, or Tower Control. And starting with this episode, I had updated my intro once again to look cleaner and flashier. On 3/9/16, I recorded a 4-player session, and the intent was to record squad battles. Well, after a lot of losing, we switched over to Turf War instead, but it was still fun in the end, and that's what counts. On 5/29/16, this was the 1-year anniversary of Splatoon and my Ink It Up series, and to celebrate, I used the Splattershot Jr. in default Inkling equipment. On 6/1/16, I hosted another friend room, as this was the first standard friend room that I had hosted with co-commentators since 1/2/16. So, like usual, each player got a chance to select a map and a mode. On 7/3/16, I recorded myself finally achieving an S rank in Splatoon's ranked battle mode. It certainly wasn't easy, but after hours of playing Tower Control, I finally achieved an S rank, and I recorded the exact moment in which I finally earned it. Oh, it was so nice. On 7/22/16, the final Splatfest occurred, and it was the toughest challenge of them all, Team Callie versus Team Marie. After starting the episode with a long-winded explanation as to why I was on Team Callie, I recorded sessions in different bursts throughout the day. Unfortunately, Team Callie did not win the Splatfest, but it was certainly a close and intense session. Seeing as Splatoon was about to start losing support due to the conclusion of Splatfests and the lack of new maps and modes, I figured that from here on out recording sessions were going to be a bit more scarce. so I started focusing on other videos on my channel. But finally, on 8/21/16, I hosted and recorded another friend room session, and I made sure to get a rotation of players that I had not yet had. Come 9/15/16, I was in need of a quick recording session, and since once again I hadn't played Splatoon in a few weeks, I decided that a Splatoon video was fitting. I teamed up with Picanjo and we did some squad battles and tower control. Together, I think that we made for a pretty good duo. Or so I like to think. On 10/1/16, I recorded a spur-of-the-moment Splatoon session with some friends. My friends and I were planning on hopping online and playing Turf War anyway, but I just decided to record it, and it turned out to be a pretty enjoyable experience. On 11/12/16, I decided to record another session by myself. I figured that now that I was an S-rank player, and since I hadn't really given Splat Zones too much of a time to shine in my series, it was nice to just show some intense matches and showcase what it's like to be an S-rank player, since not too many players these days are. I didn't record another session until the first week of 2017, and this session took place on 1/7/17. As I had grown gradually busier and busier, I hadn't played too much of Splatoon. And so, much like the previously mentioned 10/1/16 session, I recorded another spur-of-the-moment session because my friends and I were going to play online anyway, and I thought that it would be fun to record everything. So this was another Turf War session, but at least the maps and conversations this time around were different. On 1/28/17, I recorded another friend room session, since it had been a few months since I had done so, and I made sure that the session consisted of a rotation of players that I had not yet recorded, and that led to some pretty amusing results. From there, I did not record another session until May 19th, 2017, and these last few episodes are what I refer to as the Final Four, or Final Five if you count this episode. The first episode of the Final Four consisted of me simply playing by myself, as I tried to get back into the groove of things. So it's just a simple recording session of me, no co-commentators. The second episode of the Final Four was a friend room recorded just a day later on 5/20/17. It consisted of any remaining Splatoon players that were still active on my Wii U friend roster, and I wanted to make sure that I had one more regular friend room session before my series ended. That way I can say that I had a fair share of non-themed friend room recordings. On 7/8/17, I recorded the third and final hide-and-seek session. Since it had been a while since I recorded the previous one, I thought that I should have one more hide-and-seek session to end the series. And now that I look at it, I guess you could call these 3 hide-and-seek episodes the hide-and-seek trilogy of Ink It Up. One was recorded in 2015, one was recorded in 2016, and one was recorded in 2017. This episode would also be the last co-commentated episode of the series. On 7/21/17, I recorded my final online multiplayer matches as I aimed to reach my final goal of reaching level 50. I played and recorded for several hours, and I lost my S rank in the process, but I did reach level 50, and I showcased all sorts of maps and modes in this recording. I also figured that this would act as a nice conclusion to this series before this current recap episode. And now, I can properly transition things into my new Splatoon 2 series. And here we are now. So as you can see, Ink It Up has come a very long way. I've had many episodes focused on new maps and modes, I've had many sessions focused on goofy stuff, I've had many episodes focused on in-game events and challenges, and I've had many episodes focused on myself as I reached some sort of goal. I had themed sessions and memorable recordings, and I like to think that I had a fair share of diversity in the series. But I also have a bit of extra trivia to share with you guys before I completely wrap things up. There are actually a couple of recording sessions that were never uploaded. At least one of these recordings was never uploaded because my audio got corrupted. 2 of these recordings were Splatfest sessions. The first Splatfest session had footage that can be seen vaguely in the second intro that I made for the series, and the other Splatfest session can be vaguely seen in the ending of my third and final Ink It Up intro. And speaking of my Ink It Up intro, I previously stated that the song was composed by my friend Peach Toadstool. If you listen to the song carefully, it actually contains melodies of Splatoon songs. The lyrics are sung by Vocaloid characters such as Hatsune Miku, and the colors of the text in the intro reflect which character is singing what lyric. There are also these abstract pink and yellow images that appear on my Ink It Up intro, and these are the same images that appear in the official single-player trailer for Splatoon. So I don't really know what they are, but they're official. Coming up with the titles for each of the Ink It Up episodes was also pretty fun. In case you haven't noticed, every episode of the series, except for this current episode that you're watching, consists of either the word squid or the word ink being substituted into a common phrase or pun. Some of them are a bit more forced, but some of them actually worked out nicely. The inspiration for this idea actually came from Ed, and Eddie, and I thought it would be a fun idea to incorporate here. I also plan to incorporate this naming convention idea into my upcoming Splatoon 2 Ink It Up series. Also on each thumbnail, for friend room sessions, I made it so that the players on the top row had a different color outline than those on the bottom row. And I did this to better reflect how Splatoon matches are set up, with one team facing another team. Now, in team-up episodes, like when I played squad battles, all the players had the same color outline, since we were all on the same team. The thumbnail for the first episode of the series and for the 45th episode of the series share the same backdrop image. This means that the 45th episode of Ink It Up is the only episode in the series in which the picture on the thumbnail does not actually occur within the video. Every stage in the game has appeared on a thumbnail at least twice. Since there are only about a dozen or so stages, that means that some stages appeared on thumbnails quite a handful of times. So here's the exact amount of each time a stage appeared on this thumbnail. As you can see, Salt Spray Rake appeared a lot. And for my last bit of trivia, here are my official weapon stats from the official Splatoon 2 website. Obviously, my most popular weapon was the Splat Roller. I maxed out the amount of points I can get with it. And of the weapons that I used in the game, my least popular weapon was the Ink Brush. What a surprise. And here we are now. It's truly been a blast to play Splatoon, and it is definitely among my favorite Wii U games, alongside Super Mario 3D World and Super Smash Bros. But I'm so glad that this game was as successful as it was, and I'm so glad that this game already has a sequel that appears to be performing well. But it's time to move from one game into another. The journey isn't over, it's just continuing in a new format. And so, my Splatoon 1 Ink It Up series is now coming to a close. It's been a fun ride, my fellow humans and Inklings, but now let's switch on over to another experience. Yeah, I know, obvious pun, whatever. That about wraps the series of Splatoon Ink It Up! And I'd like to thank you all for watching. Bye-bye, humans and Inklings! Hope to see you all in Splatoon 2. Whoosh!
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I post videos every day, so if you want to be notified for when my next video goes out, please be sure to subscribe by clicking on my icon right there in the center. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter. My tag is @RealYoshiller. Thanks a bunch, see you all in future videos. Bye-bye, humans! Whoosh!